I'm Sandy Schroeck with LBR Educates. Today we're going to the Design 101 series, and what we're going to talk about, how can you increase the customer satisfaction of your customers with every design that they get. One of the things I noticed as I'm teaching designers is the stem insertion depth is a big issue, and it really can affect the lasting quality of a design. When's the last time you had a customer come in and say, oh my gosh, my arrangement lasted 3 weeks, and you think to yourself like, oh Lord, I don't know if that arrangement lasted 3 weeks. You think, well, the iris probably didn't last 3 weeks, but some of the carnations and some of the chrysanthemums maybe did. We're very easily, we want to not only vary the product that we have in our container, or not only think about the mechanics, but also the flower choices. So some things that are longer lasting, variety of buds that are going to open and progress using some of the chrysanthemums and carnations. Some people condemn carnations. I embrace them. Don't condemn the flower, condemn the user. So if you're using them the same old way you did in an arrangement, dotty, 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 that's shame on you. So there's so many ways that you can use those materials in new ways, and it really affects the lasting quality of your designs. Today we're going to be designing in foam. I like to design in foam. It gives me control of my insertions so that I'm able to see and know confidently that that stem will stay in that place that I place it. I'm also able to create negative space within a design. So here you can see that we've used the parallel stem placement of the two snapdragons. We've done some framing and adding some dynamic lines in with the curly willow, but really gave enough space for this rose lily to be able to grow and expand and mature. And as I'm placing that flower with using foam, I can give it enough space to grow and be able to mature and have a beautiful life in that design as it keeps going. So what we're going to do is look at how I would start off with. When I first started designing, we started with the block of foam about 1 to 2 inches above the rim of the container. And as I've progressed in my designing, unless I'm going to use, so there you saw I did do some framing. Here I would be able to do some sideways insertions, but I'm still going to target to get my stems down into that middle area. So I am going to start off with cutting that foam more level with the container. That leaves less mechanics for me to have to hide, and it really creates a great design. So you can do a little bit higher, but what we want to think about then is the target of where we're going to go with our flower stems. Gravity, we know, the Oasis foam holds 40 times its own water. The structure of the foam was created to match the capillary system of flowers. So it does release water to the flower and keep it hydrated. But it also, we have gravity fighting against it too. If a container like this is used that you can't see the water level in, and the customer doesn't add water to that container, we have it full when it leaves, and of course it's happy hour for the flowers the first couple days, and so it's going to keep on going down and drinking. So because of gravity, that water is going to dry out from the top first and then in from the sides, and so where we're really going to have the most concentration of water is in this general area. So that's going to be the target where we're going to go for our stem placements. We're going to start off with less experienced designer. What I'm going to do is, it's a little bit tough here, but I'm going to go here. I would pull this container, like if I'm on a design table, I would pull that container right to the edge. Then I can come here. I'm just going to do this a little bit sideways, but I can go here. I can see where that's going to go. I position my fingers to mark where I'm gonna cut that flower. And then you can see when I insert that, I can insert it with confidence, know that it's gonna be fall into the place that I want it to be, and it'll be into my target zone for the most water that we're gonna be able to absorb. Many times I hear people say, oh, I never use snaps in foam. I use all types of flowers in foam and am very successful with it. But the biggest difference is, so you can see here, I can go and look at this and do this one more time. So I'm putting my finger down and marking, then I take my other hand, and you can cut it with a knife or a clippers. If you're gonna use a clippers, you need to make sure that it's sharp enough that it doesn't crush that stem. So if you are using clippers, just reiterate once again, it has to be very sharp. I can see where I'm gonna go in, and I'm gonna use my fingers to feed that stem down in and with confidence, and it's gonna fall into the position that I want it to for the composition that I'm creating here in this design. Next, we're going to add in a base, and there's many discussions about hydrangeas in foam too. And I work a lot of different events around the country and with a lot of people. And as we're putting in those hydrangeas, you really want to make sure that it's targeted deep in the foam. The biggest issue, I believe, is not properly cleaning your buckets ahead of time. And then also the stem insertion. Sometimes you have ones and they pull out and they're just right up in this top area. And that, if you do that arrangement a couple days in advance, that is going to be the first place that dries out. So you do want to be aware of that. So I use hydrangeas in foam with confidence. Our next stem that we're going to add in is one of the rose lilies. And I just come in here, and sometimes some of the foliage interrupts the line, the flow of the line in the design, and I want it to be a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to take some of that foliage off, and you can see that we're creating kind of a circular pattern line there with our materials, and then just coming in this case here. So I have a focal that I'm going to bring down right at the conversion point of the two lines, and so that's going to come into my focal point area, and I'm going to bring it in. And so in that case, it's a little bit shorter, but still the length of that stem, I kept it as long as possible, and it's down into that area there. And we can just hope that the customer does water that. We're going to add a couple pieces of foliage. You saw that I didn't overgreen right at the beginning. And I'm going to add some accent pieces of foliage here on my edges. 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And I just have cut that and brought that together there. Always doing things in repetition. So if you do it once, do it twice, so that you have that continuous color that comes back and forth in that design. Then you want to think about texture within this design and some of the other longer lasting pieces. On one-sided, I don't make my one-sided very one-sided. I always tend to finish off the back to add a lot more depth and value. So we're going to come in with 2 of these cremins.
Sandy, we have a question.
Okay.
Patience, thanks for watching.
Oh, hey.
Sandy, is it best to remove all foliage on the hydrangea, or do the leaves help drop the water?
I remove all the foliage on the hydrangea because a lot of water transpires through the foliage, so that that way that water goes right into the head of the hydrangea. The other thing that I would do if I was in had a party that was going to be in a really warm environment in the summer, I would add a coating of the finishing touch onto the hydrangea as well for party work to add a little bit more moisture into that flower.
Great. Thanks, Patience,
Thanks,
for your
Patience.
question. Anybody else has questions throughout, please
Yeah,
share.
we have Nancy Martinez, who's our Director of Marketing and the retail floral branch of our sales team. And she's here and kind of monitoring the questions and gonna feed, and my photographer extraordinaire. So now we're just gonna come in and add just a little bit different textural elements. And so I had the hydrangea, then I played off that and brought into some of the green trick. And then we're gonna finish off a little bit of basing in the back with some carnations, just to add a little bit more of that color back here. I will use carnations for basing a lot. And as I'm looking, so I see that color here, and just to keep that repetition going, I'm gonna add one up on the other side to just complete that color, coming back and forth and feeling that it adds more depth. So having it come here and then be over in here, it draws your eye through the design, and rather than there being a lot of flowers in blocking, I have some negative space that I'm selling here. We're able to sell some air, which is always very profitable. And lastly, we'll come in and we're gonna just add some framing. So we talked about this. So each design, it's as big as the space that it takes up. And as you see here, now if I add in these two pieces of Italian ruscus, but what I'm doing is tailoring them, and I want to create that smooth line that comes back there. I'm able to massage that a little bit to get it to bend, and then I cleaned off some of the foliage that's on the back side to be able to create a smooth line. Here I'm gonna do like a paddle cut so that when I put this in the foam that it doesn't turn, because I definitely want it to be very directional within the design. We'll do that one more time here. You can just see there's a lot of foliages, and these can be saved and used in like personal flowers, and the smaller pieces can be laid together and added to the base of the design. But look at the difference of that tailoring on that. So it really cleans it up. I'm not gonna throw that away. I'm definitely gonna use it, but how much value that framing this design doesn't want to go in. There we go. So I needed to get my fingers down in there so I could feel that going in, and so that I know it's a solid insertion. If you do put a flower in and decide that it's not in the position that you want it to be, I want you to pull it all the way out and go into another hole. Because if you pull it up and adjust it, now that stem is not in contact with that cell structure of the foam. So it's gonna draw water here. If I pull it up, I'm gonna have a space, and then that flower is going to not live as long and ultimately affect the lasting quality of your design. Some people think, you know, I teach a lot of classes, and as we're going, sometimes I have older designers that come and younger designers that come, and some of the most experienced designers sometimes, as we finish the designs, I'll go through, and maybe it's just the turn, the simple turn of a head on an arrangement. So I'm gonna pull out one of the flowers, and I always give this speech, the soapbox speech of the stem insertions right at the beginning of the class. But invariably, as I'm going through and kind of analyzing when we're doing some hands-on classes, I pull out a stem and the stem is all on the floor. And it's barely in the foam, it's just in the top percentage of the foam. So that I know is going to definitely affect the lasting quality of that arrangement and ultimately the customer satisfaction. If you can have your customers talking about you and your designs, that's the best advertising that you can get. Having them say, wow, I got an arrangement from them and it was beautiful, it lasted a long time, and it was simply stunning. And it'll be an investment into a profitable future for you, to be able to have that advertising that's out there. So whether you're old or been in the business a long time or you're new, you still can learn from making sure that you do nice deep insertions and your customer satisfaction level is going to go way up.
Sandy, just a note, Deborah says beautiful design,
Oh.
beautiful clean design.
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned hopefully your customers will continue to water it. Is there any advice you can give to the audience here on how to educate customers that you actually do need to continue to water something they can't see?
Yeah, there are tags that say add water daily, but also just a reminder when they pick them up to add water because they can't see it going down in a container, but just creating that consumer awareness. So we know foam does hold a lot of water and release it to the flowers, but if you know, some of the consumers, we take for granted that they'll add water daily, but lots of times that is not the case.
Mama Kim from St. Louis says hello.
Oh, hey, girl. So the next container that we're using today is one of the Eco Essentials container from Smithers Oasis. And this is also made out of all varieties of plant material. So it's a bamboo and fiber extracts, and it will degrade in a landfill down the road, but so those are new containers from Smithers and has that enhanced biodegradability option. So I have another hydrangea here, and I'm just gonna come in. Another thing to watch out for, especially like on carnations or hydrangeas, they have these knots right here. And so as I'm going, what I'm gonna do is clean that down, because as I'm inserting that into the foam, it'll make that hole of that pathway. So if you cut right here, right below a knot, it's gonna make a bigger hole, and your flower can potentially move and twist its way you know, loose as it's getting delivered. Here.
Susanna says hi.
Oh, how are you? It's good to see everybody here. It's all good.
It's like a little reunion.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't see each other so much anymore, and the hands-on classes are kind of canceled for a while. So it's not only about making really great creative arrangements. Of course, that's definitely something we want to keep inspiring each other to do, but just thinking about those mechanics and how the value of deep stem insertions can really affect the lasting quality of your designs. So it's not only enough to make beautiful, fun, fabulous designs. You also want to make sure that the success of your flower shop getting a great reputation for lasting designs comes out of each design that you create and with the lasting quality being very improved.
Sandy,
Yeah.
how do you keep the hydrangea from wilting? It's a question from Pam.
All right, Pam, so we did talk about this a little bit. So the first tip on the hydrangeas is to make sure that your buckets are clean. That's number one. So you clean your buckets with DCD, make sure you're using preservative water, get them in water overnight, and then you put them in a cooler to harden them off. And then the next thing, when I'm using hydrangeas in foam or in water, I remove all the leaves. The leaves transpire a lot of water, and so that way the water is focused into the head of the design. And in foam, I want to make sure that that stem is going down into that target area of the 1 inch below or 1 inch above the base of the container. So I'm going to put it in a nice solid insertion and be able to just make sure that I can put those in confidence. And here, so as I'm talking, I realize I'm not doing the technique again, just in case you guys just joined me. I want to show you on here, as we're designing, if you have less experienced designers, of course I'm going to do this from the back side, but you would pull your container to the edge of the table, and then you can come here and pinch your finger where you're going to cut that flower. Then when you go to put it in, you put it in confidence and that it's going to be the height that you want it to be. So come here like this, and we just go in, and so we can hold it here, see where it's going to position, use your fingers to do the mark, then do the cut right below that, and instantaneously you are putting it into that design. Here we see some repetition of the colors, and we're going to be using a complementary color palette here. The next thing we're going to do is add the pincushion protea. And this I just want to talk about some varieties of textures, and now the rules have also been kind of tossed out on the flowers that we put together. So here we see the garden scoops here, the scabiosa, Lysianthus is more of a garden flower, bells of Ireland, and then we come in with a tropical, which is the pincushion protea. And this is going to be a focal impact, and it's going to come right into the center of our design, and it's going to make people look in there and say, wow, what is that? That's really different. I've never seen that before. And you want people to look into your designs, and it captures the attention. There, I was running into another stem, so I have to move it over a little bit. And you can see how that comes through and creates that stair-stepping depth. I have a quite narrow design through here, but as you're making it, you can kind of turn it to the side too to make sure that it's not leaning forward and backwards. And we come around. Lots of times I'll use a turntable so that I can kind of keep spinning my design around as I'm making it. Add another Fatsia leaf.
Greg says, hi, Sandy,
And
love
here,
it.
Hey. So, I'm gonna come in here with a focal. So this plays off my yellow. So in the same area here, I'm gonna go there, and then I'm gonna frame another of the yellow roses up on top. Look at the gradation of them. Take one that's a little bit on the smaller side. I'm gonna come in and look from the front here, and so I can see the placement of where that's gonna go. It's gonna fall into here, and so I go rose, rose, and then the pincushion draws attention to that. And do my stuff, cut. I am gonna cut off some of the thorns down that would be in the pathway of my stem insertion in the foam. But otherwise I would not cut off all the thorns up on top, what you're just doing is injuring the rose and giving it little owies. So I don't wire any of my flowers or cut off anything additional that I have to, unless it interrupts the flow of the line within the design. So there you can see we have good repetition and some depth where we're playing back and forth. And then we're gonna come in with some basing materials, different textural elements. We're gonna look, I talked about using a variety of floral materials, so some that are a little bit longer lasting. I'm actually gonna take this daisy stem. This is a handsome daisy, and it's a variegated one, but I'm gonna clean it up. And rather than it being such a mass flower, I now can actually bring this in as a little bit more of an interest and a line flower material. So we're gonna bring that up in there. And then these I'm gonna lay together. I always take stems, multiple stems, lay them together, and then feed them in at the same time. Now I wanna think about this coming in, and as people look at it from the back, that it feels like it's part of the same little patch of the garden that's all growing together. So we're gonna add a couple different heights in here of this, and I just walk my fingers up those stems so that I can, on a softer stem, if you put it in holding it up here like this, you're really likely to bust it. But if you put it in like this, I can lay these two together, put 2 insertions in at one time, and I go down in, connect my fingers with the foam here, and then I walk my fingers up that stem to be able to get a nice solid insertion. And we're just gonna bring.
Nice compliment from Heather. You're so talented. Thanks for doing this. And Tammy says this is beautiful.
Thank you very much. Buttons. So we're just coming in, just trying to be efficient with my stem insertions on laying those together. And then I'm gonna poke right through that Fatsia leaf so that that lays down a little bit and just comes in. So now, you know, I've used a less expensive flower that I know is gonna be a good value and it's gonna last a long time to really kind of a different use. And so once again, just thinking about not condemning any specific flowers, but think about the users. So now as I'm looking here, I'm a little bit wider here, I'm flat back here, and I have a couple of filler flowers that I can use. Some of the Estelle Solidago, which is a really soft, pretty yellow, and then the Hypericum. Hypericum is another floral material that I do take the leaves off. I find that that's kind of the first thing to go on Hypericum. So I'll take those off, and we're gonna just create a grouping of these right over on this side. And you can see how that balances out the strength of the green hydrangea on this side and the Hypericum coming over here. We're gonna add another green just back here to give a little bit more depth and texture. I got a little bit too long, talking too much. Going in, and just so I have that green kind of throughout, it keeps my eye wandering throughout the design. And then we're going to just add a little bit of the Solidago. Now the Solidago, I'm gonna do the same thing. This is more of a mass, and what I'm gonna do is take multiple pieces, lay them together. I don't wanna pay you to do, 3 insertions. I wanna have it be more of a mass piece, and just lay them together, do that one cut, and then I can be efficient with my insertions and also do more of a grouping presentation instead of dotty. And that's another way to update your designs, is to do groupings of components versus the dotty that we learned in school. And I don't know if I've been out quite a while, but everybody keeps learning and growing. And a way to update your designs these days is to just do that grouping presentation, but control your eye through the design. And so here, down with my fillers, what I did is kind of created a triangle. So I've got it coming out here, here, and here, and that kind of adds our depth throughout. We can walk through the design. We have some transparency happening so that I have control of where I can place the flowers. And that's what using foam is all about. I'm a little bit of a control freak, if anybody doesn't know. If you know me at all, I kind of might have to admit to being a lot of a control freak. But that's the beauty of foam. I have control of where I'm gonna put that floral material and know that when it gets to the customer, it's gonna look fabulous and be a great design. So depth of your insertions can definitely increase the longevity of your designs. The future of your business is really dependent on adding some creative flair, using that biodegradable Max Life foam from Smithers Oasis is a great way to go. The foam itself actually extends the life of the floral material, keeping it fresh much longer than other types of foam. So please use these creative tips, add some creative flair and some negative space, some framing to your designs, and get people talking about how long your designs last. If you like this video, make sure to like and share it, and we're going to continue on with this Design 101 series, and so that you have this to be able to use to maybe train some of your employees. And we want to not only spread beauty, but also talk about the base of our designs, the mechanics behind it, the flower choices to make sure that we're extending the life, and the satisfaction of our customers. So make sure and follow LBR Educates and LBR Inspires, and we appreciate you guys attending today. Thanks very much.